Hi, I'm Jill Schimmel with the Office of Multilingual Learners. I'm thrilled to be here to be talking to you about how you can empower your students for a can-do world language classroom. And I'll step back and welcome you to New York City, DOE, and Yokoso, bienvenidos, mirse vini. These are the languages I speak, and so glad you're here. So in this section, during our short time together, I will walk you through how you can set your students up for success by starting and ending each class with can-do statements. Just as you will in your classroom, I'm starting this session by articulating the objectives. By the end of this workshop, you will be able to craft can-do statements for focusing on communicative goals as well as cultural goals, since your class is designed to help students develop their linguistic and intercultural proficiency. And then we'll come back to these at the end because we always want to close everything by checking our objectives. Stop and jot. You have a note catcher available to you, so please take a second and scan that QR code or type in the tiny URL link, and that will open up a document so you can share your ideas. What's your initial understanding? What do you think about can-do statements as you're coming in right now? And then what you're learning throughout this. This slide, we really want to address some misconceptions about our multilingual learners and English language learners here in New York City. In New York City, we pride ourselves on being a multilingual, multicultural city. But even in our schools, certain myths may persist that can unintentionally limit the opportunities and potential of our multilingual learners. These are the kinds of messages, spoken or unspoken, that can too often shape how multilingual learners are treated in classrooms, such as they don't bring skills or knowledge, or they need to be separated, or everything needs to be simplified for them. That English is the only language that matters, clearly not in your classroom. I added one specific to world language classrooms in purple, where you may have heritage or native speakers, students who know part of the language. They may not be fully literate, but they have some understanding and connection to the language you're teaching. They are not there to be your tutors, but rather all multilingual students' abilities should be affirmed, celebrated, and built upon. We have resources on our webpage on how to best serve your heritage and native speakers. So think about these and think about your role in the school, advocating for multilingual learners and helping to break down any misconceptions you see. So what are the keys? To help counter these myths and mindsets, the Office of Multilingual Learners has developed a resource, a guide called the Keys to Advanced Language and Literacy Development for Multilingual Learners, with practices that welcome multilingualism as a gift and recognize that ELs are capable, resourceful learners. Some of the most critical thinkers in our school, right? They need to navigate different languages and different cultures and ensure they have the opportunity to thrive in every classroom. So there are 6 keys that give school members, staff members, teachers, school leaders, counselors a roadmap for recognizing what students bring, to ensure they have access to grade level content, and to collaborate across roles to track meaningful growth. So they're designed to be used flexibly, not as a checklist, but as a set of guiding principles paired with practical strategies that can be woven into any subject, any grade, in any classroom. So as new educators in New York City public schools, these keys are here to support you in creating inclusive, rigorous, and affirming learning environments for all students. And specifically, we're going to focus on key 3, what you do every day. You integrate language across subjects and units. And again, we're going to talk about the blue functions of the standards, those functional objectives every day. So we are integrating language development across subjects and unit, right? That's what you do every day. And our goal is that you can develop and design daily functional language learning objectives as can-do statements. So every day, the students can communicate more and express their ideas more than when they came into your classroom that day. Asset-based approach, of course. So in action in world language programs, right? So first is starting out with standard 1, interpretive communication. and I've highlighted the functions of each standards in blue. You're providing the students with really rich input. It's an authentic resource. It might be a video, a song, a commercial, an infographic, a short text, and you provide them with a task and a way for them to show that they can understand, interpret, and analyze. Are they completing a graphic organizer? Are they making a list? Are they labeling things, right? Think about a developmentally appropriate, proficiency level appropriate way that they're showing that they can understand, interpret, and analyze. Standard 1 sets the foundation because you're giving the students something really rich and exciting for them to discuss. And they see grammar and they see vocabulary in context in that rich input you provided them with. Then you move on to Standard 2. Standard 2, we build the opportunities for students to practice using the language. They're exchanging information, again, those blue functions of each standard. They're exchanging information, they're expressing their feelings, preferences, and opinions. And in order to do that, you need to think about the functional chunks and the skills and the grammar and vocab they need in their toolbox in order to express their preferences, feelings, and opinions. Students may need scaffolds such as sentence frames, word banks, chat mats, visuals, or nonverbal clues. So knowing your students well can support you in strategically planning according to the target language and the proficiency targets of that lesson. Finally, after students have an opportunity to discuss with their peers, they then present their information, their ideas, in order to describe, inform, narrate, explain, or persuade. Those are the 5 functions of standard number 3. So this is a knowledge building cycle, right? So we will now zoom in to unpack this idea of rich interpretive communication, setting the foundation for the knowledge building cycle. It's a really exciting time for world languages, and I'm here to support you in planning instruction aligned to the revised standards. So we want to focus, we have 5 standards focusing on communicative and intercultural proficiency. The last 2 are cultural products, practices, and perspectives. And standard 5 is cultural comparisons. But we're focusing on the communicative standards right now and those blue functions of each standard. And so this is going to help our students become communicators, not conjugators. And you do that by writing can-do statements that specifically connect to a functional language learning objective, aligned to key 3. So again, as we said, standard 1 has 3 functions, asking students to understand, interpret, and analyze. Again, when you give them rich input that they need to read and listen to. Standard 2 follows from standard 1. You guide students to discuss what they just read or listened to, exchange information, express their feelings, preferences, and opinions. And in standard 3, we ask our students to share what they understood and discussed, and again, to describe, inform, narrate, explain, or persuade. These are the communicative goals for your language classes. And should have mentioned at the end of this, that reflection piece, we're going to ask you a few questions. You'll take a short quiz about which of these functions, these blue functions, do you think your students will be best at? What do you think might be challenging? And what questions do you have? So you'll hear me talking about the blue functions, so stop and jot these ideas. And as you begin to teach, you'll learn about the Danielson framework, which is how administrators will give you feedback on teaching. One of the big ideas, Danielson 1A, is knowing to show that you know your content, and the way to teach it, the pedagogy, is understanding and explaining and starting your classes modeling can-do statements that focus on a functional objective. So again, these blue functions of each statement. And so the standards are here. This document, again, color-coded. I encourage you to have this up in your classroom as big as possible. It needs to be in color. Give students a copy of this so they know exactly what they're doing, and they understand can-do statements focus on the blue functions each day. So this is a resource from New York State breaking down what can-do statements are and the components of each. Notice that color coding and the 4 elements of your can-do statement. The red, context in which they're communicating. Blue is that language function. Green, those language skills they're using, how they're showing what they can do, like their success criteria. And then finally in purple, that cultural knowledge. Culture is part of everything you do in the language classroom, and culture comes to life through the authentic resources that you use. And so how will you write those can-do statements? Let's analyze some examples and apply. So here's some examples from Unit 0. One of the most important things you can do as a new teacher is to build a community where students want to take risks in learning the language, to approach learning with a growth mindset. So you'll be asking them to read, write, speak, and listen in a language that's new to them, maybe, or a language they know from home. Here are some examples of empowering can-do statements from our Ready to Go Unit 0. I'll have some PL on this the first few days of September. And it was developed to help students understand what their proficiency journey will be. So on the left, we have some very traditional learning targets. Students will be able to define performance and proficiency. First of all, this is not a reflective student-centered, right? This is like, that student will be able to do this. So in our language classrooms, we always want the objectives to be a functional language learning objective focusing on a blue standard. So for example, for number 1, you can reframe that in a positive way as I can describe what language performance is, and you can say by using some memorized phrases or by creating a list, for example, that's that green language skills. I can compare performance and proficiency, and how I'm doing that, I'm showing that I can do this by completing a Venn diagram. Number 2, I can describe the characteristics of a good language learner, and I can express my personal opinions on learning a language. And then in order to help them be successful, you think about the skills and strategies and language that they need in their toolbox. Maybe they need the verb gustar to share their opinions and preferences, for example. And able to compare cultural practices. So if you're doing a lesson on Dia de los Muertos or Obon, which is a festival in Japan to celebrate ancestors, right? So think about how you will ask students to describe how their own family honors their ancestors. And one of the best resources is an intercultural conversation chat mat that is linked on our World Languages page. And then asking them to compare, again, completing a Venn diagram. But it's very specific which function they're working on when they're completing that Venn diagram. Let's look at some more examples from the World Languages themes and topics on the right side. And again, you'll be able to click on all these things. But these are the topics that you will teach aligned to the proficiency targets of your course. So let's think about some examples from your units. So often we see a very traditional learning target. Some of the old textbooks might have something that says students will be able to use the preterite and perfect tenses. And I encourage you to connect that grammar point to the functional goal. Why do we even teach preterite and imperfect? These are different ways to express the past tense in Spanish. So we really want students to be able to identify what's happening in the past when they read or listen to a text in the target language. So we're asking them to, standard 1, they're interpreting information, reading a story, and being able to sequence the events. What happened just one time? What happened continuously in the past, right? And so they need the knowledge of the preterite and imperfect to do that. So again, that right side can-do statement is a functional language learning objective based on a communicative goal, and that grammar point supports that communicative goal. Number 2, you're going to have students talk about their daily schedules. But again, let's focus on writing a can-do statement with functional goals. We're asking students to show their understanding of Costa Rican website by listing the classes the student has. And then for standard 2, you're asking them to express their preferences. Again, maybe you can put in green as a skill by using the correct conjugation of gustar, for example, the toolbox they need to express their preferences. And number 3, describing their classes. That is one of the functions of standard 3. And so here's some more examples from Unit 0. What does this all look like in a classroom? This is what teachers were asking. And how can we bring the 5 standards to life in our classroom? So can-do statements are within the foundational section. And so this, again, Unit 0 is to help students understand. We're going to move along this path to proficiency. We are going to be a language learner with a growth mindset. We are going to look beneath the surface of the iceberg to look at the products, practices, and perspectives. And linked in here, again, are those intercultural conversation chat mats where they are available in English and the target language, at least Spanish, French, Italian, and simplified Chinese for Mandarin classes. And so you'll print them back to back in English and the target language so that students have the functional language they need to be able to describe what do they experience in their own culture. And then in the other culture, en la otra cultura, observo que, right? Like, so they can speak about these things. So you're giving them the language to communicate their ideas. So as we come to a close, I'll share that as the Office of Multilingual Learners, we work to create resources and professional learning opportunities for you. This is the first of many experiences of learning together. This QR code will take you to our Google site where you can sign up for our multilingual monthly newsletter. And then if you navigate to the World Languages page at the top, so this is our main page, the QR code takes you to this, Office of Multilingual Learners. And if you go to the right side, World Languages, and so here's all the information on upcoming professional learning, seal of biliteracy, all these resources that are available for you. And so I have professional learning all the time. I look forward to meeting you. And those intercultural conversation chat mats are there, reflective checklists, right? What does standards-based instruction mean? A big part of standards-based instruction is functional can-do statements, which is exactly what we just worked on. Self-paced modules. And then if you're in a high school, it's really important you get to know about the seal of biliteracy, which really celebrates students in your program and beyond. Looking ahead, every Monday afternoon, I'll be having virtual professional learning for you. That may be, that's probably dedicated professional learning time for you. So that's also linked on our website. Professional learning community for Mandarin teachers, which is really exciting. A year-long series on backwards design in world languages, and then citywide conferences. One will be virtual, one will be in person on January and June, which are citywide professional learning days. I always want to have learning available for you. So just as you will close your class, we'll close by thinking about what we learned, explored, and so we explored and analyzed some examples. So I want to check that you've met the objectives of the session. So pretend I'm right there and I can see, but can you draft some can-do statements focusing on functional communicative goals? Thumbs up. Do you understand how to develop can-do statements for cultural understanding, thinking about comparisons and perspectives? Do you understand the importance of planning to open your lesson with functional communicative goals and then close your lesson with functional communicative goals? And then reflecting on how these strategies can be used in your classroom this school year. So after this, you will click on the quiz and you'll reflect on, again, these blue functions, right? We have 3 for standard 1, 4 for standard 2, 5 for standard 3, 2 for standard 4, and then 1 for standard 5. Which 3 of these blue language functions do you think will be easiest for your students and why? Which two language functions do you think will be more challenging for your students and why? And what is one question you might still have about writing can-do statements? So take a minute to click on the quiz and think about look back to your stop and jot graphic organizer, what you wrote down. And I can't wait to read your responses. And then an additional resource available to you in addition to all the world languages specific resources. These are from my colleagues in Office of Multilingual Learners. Please share this with all your colleagues across the school because every teacher is a teacher of multilingual learners, right? And lastly, I look forward to hearing from you. So please do email me, again, Jill Schimmel, jschimmel@schools.nyc.gov. Tell me where you've started to teach. Maybe I'll get to visit you this year. Let me know how it's going and keep in touch. And I have a real community of language teachers. You may be the only one at your school. You may be part of a really large department. So anything you need, I'm here for you. So please do email me and I can't wait to hear from you. So thank you for everything you do, and ganbatte kudasai in Japanese. Please try your best, and I can't wait to hear from you. Bye.